Welcome to the last 2024 Davinci Resolve tips and tricks video. In this episode, I'll introduce you to my new product, the 2025 Fixed Node Tree. I will show you my revamped trees and how to use them. Let's take it away. Here you can see a quick preview. This is where I develop my LUTs. This is my timeline or group post clip tree. And then we have our IDTs where we're gonna get the camera color space and move it into Davinci Resolve white gamma intermediate, which is my preferred working space within Davinci Resolve. Then we have primaries where we do all our primaries corrections. We have secondaries where we perform all our secondaries if we need to. Then we have trims. Okay, so a quick disclaimer. I'm recording this video after I recorded the bulk of the episode, and because I got so delayed and now we're very close to the festive season, I decided to include a few things for free. So let's start. I'm gonna go on the main video node by node, tree by tree. So what I'm including now, it's my Kodaky 23A3 LUT. Yeah, this is the DR19. This is the Kodaky. Really nice rendering of the image. And on this section, I'm including the JP2499 DCTL. I'm including the Callan Kelly mid-grade chart. I'm including 13 S-curves. I'm including 4 split tone schemes. So this is with the LUT. This is with the split tone scheme. Here, I'm including one of my, however many I have, 30 odd diffusion filters that are included in my pack. Just one, the Black Pro Mist in full rendition. So let's give it a bit more contrast. Let's add my LUT, maybe in the split toning. And this is with the full blast. I repeat again, so it shows that it's quite a lot in this image, but it's doing something really beautiful. You can see how it's softening those highlights, it's sort of glowing them, and what it's doing to the blacks as well. It's a really nice looking filter that I had decided to include for free. And the other thing that I'm also including, let me go back to the main look development timeline tree, is all of my trees have one or two things. For instance, my film box, which is a paid for plugin, and the Hansa with my preferred settings, so like starting point settings that I'm including in this tree. But if you don't have these plugins, then I include clean node trees, and they will look like this. So exactly the same, so without those nodes that will require the paid for version of those plugins. So you don't get the every time you add the tree that you don't have this. So you have a clean version for every tree that I offer. So now with the disclaimer finished, let's take it away. Cool. That was a really quick introduction to my fixed node tree, and now we're gonna go very deep into it. Let's start with this shot here. It's easy. You're gonna receive a pack with my 3 new fixed node trees, a few LUTs being 1D contrast curves, and some split tones and tone modifiers out of my split tone and tone modifiers pack. So I'm including 4 in this pack, and then a bunch of free DCTLs that you can download, and I'll show you how to use them and how I use them. The way to install these are 3 DRX, so you just drag and drop into your stills or power grade albums. The stills only appear per project base. So if I open a new project, I won't see anything here in stills, but all these power grade albums, I will see them. So you can right click, add the power grade album, and drag and drop your 3 trees. So these new revamped node trees are a consequence of the new added layers in Davinci Resolve 19. So how you add more layers than the usual group pre-clip, if you're grouping, that I highly suggest, and I have a video here all about grouping. How you expand this to more layers? Well, you come here to the settings. In general options, you have up to 4 new layers that you can add. I use up to 3, and I call them primaries, secondaries, and trims. The other thing I would like you to do is to check this box, luminance mixer defaults to 0, and I'm gonna show it to you why it's important when we use nodes in a linear color space. And disable this, use S-curve for contrast. and I will explain you why, but if you watch my contrast video, you'll know why you should not have this turned on. In master settings, I'm on a 1080 timeline resolution and I'm outputting 1080 to my reference monitor. And well, and color management, this here with my fixed node tree with color managing with nodes, but it is important that you get the right color management settings here, because when you use color aware tools like the HDR palette, they will look at this to know in what color space we are working. So once you're happy with all your other settings, I would suggest you come here and save current settings as a preset. So you can, so every time you open a new project, you can decide which preset you want to use depending your finishing resolution and other things. And you don't have to do this every time and come here and, you know, add the layers, change all this. So it's already there for you. I'm gonna save. So you're gonna see that these 4 dots are gonna expand. Cool. So you have the group pre-clip. Now we have primaries, then secondaries, then the trims. I'm going to explain all these as I add the fixed node trees, the group post clip, and our timeline. So then I go ahead and apply my first fixed node tree for IDTs in the pre-clip group. This will apply it to the whole group. So let me show you quickly groups first. I usually use 2 screens, but now I have for this presentation all in one screen, so I captured the most resolution for this video. And I have this already grouped, and you can see by the chain. So you select the clips, in this case these are all slog3. So you select all these relevant clips, go to, well, if you don't have any groups created, I use a template and all my groups are created, in this case by cameras. But you can come here, add into a new group, and you can type wherever you want. In this case is slog3, which is all the Sony cameras recording slog3, and then you assign them to the group. So they are already assigned. So we have this, which is slog3, all this. So this group is Alexa LF, and this one I think it was an Alexa Mini. And we have these test charts. This is the new Alexa 35, so it's Loxy 4, the Alexa 35. And this is Loxy 3, the exact same image with the 2 different curves. Okay, so we come here. You can either drag and drop or right click and apply grade. This is our IDT in the group pre-clip. And here we have already a bunch of the most popular camera color spaces already set for you. Going into Davinci wide gamut intermediate as our working color space. And before this, I have an instance of noise reduction. If you decide to apply noise reduction before your IDT, this is if your footage from the source looks very noisy. So before sending this camera space into Davinci Intermediate, we clean the footage right here. So you enable this and then you tweak. I mean, it's got a very light setting, but you can go mental if you decide that your footage was completely destroyed. Cool. So in this case, it's slog3. So I'm gonna enable this node. It's taking us from the color space of the camera into Davinci wide gamut Davinci Intermediate. You don't have to do anything else here. It's all presets for you. So this is simple, right? You choose the camera, slog3, Sony's Loxy 3, most Alexa cameras. Loxy 4 is Alexa 35, and the new Alexa 65. C-Log's Canon Log3 G10 is red. Rec 709 is Rec 709, and DJI is DJI Log. And I'm gonna tell you quickly, let me go back to the timeline. Let's add the timeline. And this is our tree, and it's already here, the CST. But before I talk about that, let's go back. And if you have some footage in Rec 709 that you're grading at Rec 709, but you decide to use my node tree, which is taking everything into a Davinci Intermediate, let's pretend this is a Rec 709 image. So when you are here on Rec 709, when you come to the CST, and this is the only time you have to change something, it's when you working on Rec 709. You don't need to, because that Rec 709 has already tone mapping and gamut mapping. So you come here and disable this, here none, disable this, here none. So that it's only if you're working with Rec 709 footage. In this case, it's logarithmic input, so we are fine as we are. Let me make this a tiny bit bigger for you to see. I'll be zooming in and out the images for you to see some details that I'll be showing. So this way, just with the pre-clip node tree and our timeline node tree, we are normalizing the image. We're taking it from scene referred to display referred. And this case is Rec 709 Gamma 2.4 because it's how I calibrate my reference monitor, and that's what I'll be looking at. Now, we know that if you use the Mac and you're finishing for web, some people use Gamma 2.2 and some other people complain about the gamma shift. And if you want to make sure that more or less you're visualizing on Davinci what it's going to be exported and your client playing back on a Mac computer or on YouTube, maybe you should change this to Rec 09A to avoid that gamma shift or to help it, so to speak. And same thing here in your project settings that we seen before in your color management, change it here as well. I repeat, I grade all my finishing products are Rec 09 Gamma 2.4, and that's how I have my monitor calibrated. So this is my go-to and my default. If you need to change it, you change it from here. So let me talk about this one here, the group post clip, because depending on how you use the groups, and if you use them at all, but I highly recommend you use groups. And also, it will help for you to ripple grades and make your workflow much faster. I have a video here about rippling grades that you should watch. This could be for many reasons that you want to use the timeline fixed node tree rather than in the timeline section in here. So if you were to right click and apply grade, you won't apply it because it is meant to come here to timeline. You just have to create a node and then just drag and drop. Yeah, it will come a bit, depending on your screen size, a bit offset, but then you can grab it all by clicking and selecting, and then you accommodate this to your screen. If your screen is smaller than mine, this may come like this, and you may have this distribution, or you can distribute however it fits your. If you have a smaller screen, I recommend doing this. But if you have a big screen like mine, then you can have it as default. Yeah, but I was talking about when we're more likely to use group post clip rather than timeline. Some of my regular uses is this could be for many reasons, like let's say we're working with graphics. We provided Rec 09 graphics. So if I put anything here, this will affect the whole timeline. It says here timeline. And this will affect only the group that we have selected. So for instance, just for the sake of an example, I'll create a node. I'll make this all blue. Look at the clips. Oh, look at, Lightbox. So everything that's slog3, it's been affected. Everything that is not slog3, hence in a different group, hasn't been affected. So if this were Rec 09 animation, graphics, lower thirds, whatever, mostly for corporate jobs, that won't be affected if you do it by groups. If you do this same thing at a timeline level, and I'm just gonna do just one node, every single clip on your timeline will be affected, yeah, including graphics, animations, whatever. So that's one of the uses. The other use could be by cameras. Another reason is if you want to group by scenes, you have very different scenes, like very dark scenes, very bright scenes, and the look depth is slightly different. In the core should be more or less the same, but then you tweak things here, there, usually the curve, the contrast curve, so you accommodate the scene, the look of the scene a bit better. In this case, because we're affecting, this is an example, and we're affecting a bunch of footage that I have. Let's put in the timeline. Okay, so CSTs. So we have the color space transform from Davinci white gamma Davinci intermediate to our preferred output color space and gamma. I'm also providing in the pack a DCTL created by Juan Pablo Zambrano called JP2499, which looks really, really nice, and you have more tools at your disposal. You have sort of more tools and less tools, if you will. The tone mapping and gamma mapping is all like interpreted here. You have options like, yes, where you come from, so Davinci white gamma intermediate, and I outputting for 2.4. But I leave it to you, you can experiment with the density, you can do very subtle but overall hue rotations here, and highlight rotations, the purity. Don't ever use them together, so one or the other. Let's leave this for the sake of keeping it more standardized. Then we move to, let's call it like presetted show LUTs, so to speak, which is all this section. This is the overarching look of your film. So for instance, I wouldn't touch this once I set it for a film. I wouldn't touch this at all, ever, even if I have different scenes and I have different groups. So this will stay for the most part untouched, and then by scenes I can manipulate the contrast a little bit, and some corrections of, you know, hue decisions. Especially if we're working with different cameras, maybe a hue rotation. If we're working with very different lenses, yeah, some contrast and hue rotation. And if we decided to have groups by scenes for the reason that I explained before, then yeah, I will probably change all this part, but mostly never this. This is my overarching look for everything, for the whole film. So we have something to tie together the film, a consistent look. And then, yes, it can be slightly modified, but I find myself never touching again this section. So these are options. I never use them all together because they will quickly. These are my best LUT. This is a compound node, which include all my best LUT pack. There's one here that I always enable. You won't get this unless you download the pack. But just so you see, you know, just my Kodaky 2383, it just add a preferential contrast curve. You can see here the colors. You can see the rotation of the colors as well. You can see that blue going very teal, which is really a really nice look. Clear. You can see what this LUT is doing in different images as well. You know, and sort of if these are tests, as I said, but if this was a film, I'm happy with the look, and then I will tweak this accordingly. But yeah, that's a way. And obviously you have like 17, I don't know how many LUTs I'm providing in my pack, a lot of options if you wanted to. The film look creator, this is some preferential stuff. Obviously, depending on the film that you're working on, this will change and you can tweak. But I like where the grain and the halation is, and then the colors, it really depends on the film and curve you're working. You can have more contrast, less contrast. You can do a bit of bleach bypass, but I wouldn't recommend that. I have an specialized bleach bypass node. Film box, these are very expensive, but very powerful, very simplistic. I have it here. You won't have it again if you don't buy it. And I have my preferential tweaks here. Same thing with the Hansa. The Hansa is, you know, I have a discount in my page, which I will include. But yeah, this is a preferential, you know, this is also a good starting point. I have a whole video on the Hansa, and you can download some free presets that I created already. Let's enable this LUT so we have more contrast and color. And this bleach bypass is a free DCTL that I'm gonna leave you the link for you to download from Iridescent Color, which is really good. This bleach bypass is a free one that I urge you to go to the page and download. So it will appear here on your node tree. Let's go to this one, which is more color. So you can strengthen that curve, hide saturation with starting the highlights, the compression of those highlights. You can see in the waveform below. You can fill in shadows if you feel that the contrast went too far. So again, making the contrast a bit lower by putting this to full blast, and then pivoting that contrast, whatever you feel, it feels better. You have a curve built in. And obviously I have it defaulted by Davinci Intermediate. So, you know, we're going from a 2383 Kodak look. That's the Rec 09 out of the camera. This is a preferential look, my LUT pack. And we're going a bit fincher. We're going a bit bleach bypass. I just need to add a bit more green to this image, and we're already there for shooting 7 again. This LUT, especially my LUT pack, on this, you have some options to correct and move certain things. Even in the film, you know, you have the contrast here. You have the fade that will lift the shadows. You know, you can manipulate the contrast within the plugin. The LUTs, they have preferential hue rotation, a preferential contrast curve, and a preferential split toning. So using this curve and split toning here would be, it's just an overkill, because this has, I mean, if you like this, you can always write it down from here, from the gain output. But this LUT has already a preferential slight split toning. If you need to strengthen that curve, you know, if you want it more punchy, then we have this option here. And if you want a bit more split toning, it's sort of working over something that's been already done. But why not? You can. This one appears here by default, and I offer another 4. I'm going to explain that when I get to that node. But maybe at 2.5, just to add that touch of another punch of teal and orange. But yeah, this is all for you to tweak, to play with and experiment. Let's talk about the S-curve. I have a whole video talking about contrast. But as I said, so although in this case my LUT has a degree of an S-curve, you can further tweak this here. If you're not using any of these film depth tools and you're just doing everything from the scratch yourself, then probably you need to make use of this S-curve. I provide here a bunch of 1D curves that I'm offering in this pack. So this is Rec 09, right? So I disabled the one that I did by default. So let's apply a heavy one. I think it's way too heavy for this image. Obviously strong is, this is already, you know, if you're going for a punchy look, a strong curve is good. Then we have a mid curve. And then we have a low, which is lower than the actual one that the Gamma 2.4 is outputting. And then we have more filmic ones that won't affect the colors as much. You can experiment, see what you prefer. Yeah, punchy again. So the CCs will affect the colors and the LC just the luma. Yeah, on and off. Now at this point, I like to perform the split toning. As I said, all these LUTs have some sort of degree of split toning, so I'm gonna disable them, especially if you don't buy them, you won't have them. So let's go with a mid curve. So let me show you something. So I've been changing things. I've been adding curve LUTs here, but if you would like to go back to my default curve that I give you on the timeline node tree, you right click here, go to display node graph, and you will see the node graph here. So you can grab one node and drop it here. You know, if you change things and you want to go back to my initial presetted node tree, you can come here and just drag and drop nodes. So this curve is really subtle. You can see it here and you can manipulate this further if you want. So I would do the same thing as before. I'm going to reset this so I don't use two curves because these are LUTs, and I'm going to add the mid one. So it's a bit punchier than what comes by default, which is quite subtle, which sometimes it works really well with the LUTs. And this I'm going to explain quickly. It's another DCTL. I'm going to leave you the link. This is a Colin Kelly color exposure chart. It's the version 1.3. I think it's the last one. It's already all tweaked. I think by default comes with the ramps and, you know, with the steps. So it's already tweaked here on the fixed node tree and to the tone curve to be Davinci Resolve Intermediate. This show you middle gray, which is this spike here, and you can see, let me go back to, I knew I had to do this for a reason, my original S-curve node, to show you that my S-curve node has an anchor here on middle gray. So middle gray is sort of the neutral that should be preserved. All rules are made to be broken, but to start with, they're here to be neutral. So I put an anchor there on this S-curve, and most of the S-curves that I have here on my LUT pack. So we leave the neutrals neutral. So this is just a utility DCTL, and let's move on. I'm skipping this first and going to split toning, and then we can move some of these colors preferentially. So I'm adding here, we have this, this is the curve pack that I include, and then split toning. This is the whole pack of split tonings that you can download from my website, from my coffee shop. But for free, I'm going to include in this pack 4, and you can add them as LUTs here in this path for Mac application support, Blackmagic Design, Davinci Resolve, and LUTs. If you drop them here, I left you a folder that's called Davinci Resolve Tips and Tricks with this folder structure. So if you drop it like this directly on the root of LUT, they will appear on your node tree. And remember, you need to save and restart, or come here to the project settings and update the list of your lookup tables, and remember to change this from trilinear to tetrahedral. Okay, so I have one scheme here. Look at this one. Look at what it does to this one, right? It adds that night coolness and separation. I really like what it's doing. Look at this one. Yeah, I think it really helps to tie a look together and be more coherent from shot to shot. Now let's go to this image, and you can see here the split toning. I think in this case this one is quite harsh, so what you can do is come here to key output, and in this case I'm going to half it, so it's just a kiss, just a touch of split toning, and I think it really suits this image. It really enhances the skin tones, those blues at the back, the greens, the yellows, the reds. I like everything that it's doing. Yeah. So in this section is my overall preferential hue rotation. And these are not meant to be used together. It's just like this, like 3 different options for you to choose from, whichever works best for you. We're going from the broader here, which is the RGB matrix that you will find here. So every time you click in a node, it will tell you what's sort of modifying. So in this case, the color slicer, you have the red dot here. So you know that there's some tweaks here in the color slicer. In this case, the RGB matrix, and you can see over the RGB matrix, there's a red dot. So this is with the RGB mixer, my preferential rotations of hues that I give you. Basically, it's making a really nice palette for your film if you like this look. Color slicer, don't go heavy-handed because you're gonna break the image. That's what it is. That's how the tool works. And again, this is another preferential rotation hues. You know, the blues are a bit darker than before, but desaturated and denser. The reds, again, I like them more, a bit warmer most of the time. The yellows are a bit more marigold, not over the top, but marigold, and as yellow should be a bit brighter than the rest. And yeah, and you can manipulate this. And then Tetra, I have a whole video about Tetra. I'm including this DCTL for free as well. Nighttime look, but more of that cyanotic, and you can see those whites going a bit green, you know, green and more cyanotic. It's a very, very popular Netflix drama look at the moment. These are all for you to play and experiment. And yeah, these two work hand in hand. And then here we get into texture. Vintage lens is a compact node, so you can, let me enable it. Too harsh to start with. Let me dissect these 3. So within this compact node, there's 3 nodes. One is a vignette. It's a really subtle vignette. It's not a vignette that you see and say this is a vignette. But for me, you know, most of the vintage lenses, they have some sort of aberration and some vignetting, some heavier than others. But you can, you know, you can again look for the red dot and enhance this, maybe lower the gain, lower the gamma, preferential. My lens distortion. So if you can see here on the bottom left, bottom right, you know, the surroundings. Let me show you the highlighted area, right? And let me get it in black and white. So this is the mask. This is what's being affected, and it's basically blurring, a really nice realistic blur. So you can see this on, you can see the bottom left though, how it's, you know, softening that, the line at the bottom right. So yeah, and the very, very bottom middle of the image, how it's being softened. So this is some sort of distortion that some lenses have, but these characteristics are sought after. Let me do highlight in black and white for you to see. So this is a 1080, this is a 4K clip on a 1080 timeline, and this is how it should look like if you're working with 1080 on a 1080 timeline, if you're working with 8K on a 4K or 1080 timeline. All this, the distribution of this mask will change. So this is what we are looking for, and this is how your highlight in black and white should look like. No more than this. And the other thing that I've included, let's put it on, which I don't use all the time, but sometimes when we want to go heavy-handed with a vintage look, I do add it, which is this aberration. And there's something, so this is sort of splitting, you know, I'm using a very tweaked prism blur, and you can see a 1.5 of blend, just really minimal. And it creates, for me, it creates some sort of illusion. It softens the image quite a lot. So whenever I use aberration, let me come out of the compound node, I always use the texture. So let me enable the texture, which I'll talk about a little bit, but it adds some preferential high frequency texture I'm talking about now. So yeah, so you have different levels of detail that you can refine, tiny, fine, small, all the way to rough, you know, which is obviously rough is sort of the whole image becomes rougher. But yeah, you can create this sort of highly contrast looks just with this texture. You know, it doesn't have to be sharpening or detail. Look at this. Yeah, so we're giving more detail to in a rougher way to those highlights. You can do the same with the mid section, etc. The tiny is the one that will sort of sharpen or give more detail to the tiny details in the image. So this is the closest to a really nice sharpening or giving more detail to the image. And this is a distribution of that effect in the tonal range. I mean, this is really powerful. So people who just use this sharpening it's because it is faster. It's just moving this, but it doesn't look great. Texture looks really nice, and this is my go-to preset. Sometimes it's, depending on the footage, is overkill, so you can come here to global blend. I have it at 0.5. You can go lower. If you need more, you can go higher. And then I suggest you experiment with all this, because you create really nice looking things. As I said, just by getting the rough up, it's just giving some sort of a glow to those highlights. So this is looking really nice if you're going for that look. If you keep it soft, and then just leave it there. But anyway, so I was talking about the aberration. The aberration, look, when I enable it, you can sort of see the halo around everything. But then if you look away and look back to the image, you don't see it. You can't spot the halo. I'm gonna do it now. You see, on, off, on, off. So when I do this, you kind of see that everything, which is the offsetting, kind of creates a halo. And obviously, look at the curtain to the right of the image, how it's getting softer, on those edges. And obviously, her face. And as I do this on and off, you can see, you're clearly offsetting to the left. Am I not? Yeah. I'm going to leave it on. On. Look away. Look back to the image. Can you see any halo? No, you can't. If I disable this, you will feel that something, that halo disappear, but you cannot really see it. So yeah, this creates some sort of aberration of an old lens. So within all these three, I'm creating this vintage lens look. And as I said, I more often than not, I use texture when I use the aberration, because it softens the image too much. But sometimes that's what you want, the image to be a bit softer if it's been shot too harshly, with punchy lights and high contrast. Just to wrap up this developing section, I have an instance here of noise reduction. To be honest, I don't usually use this noise reduction unless after doing my development, my primaries and secondaries, there's still something that it's sort of creating chatter or still noisy. I don't know, something that I feel that it needs to be more clinical. Then I add noise reduction here, and then I use texture as well afterwards to create more detail out of that softness that I created. But yeah, all this is for you to experiment. I'm pretty sure that you're gonna have some fun creating some very nice looks with all these options. Cool, so now it's time to add our layers node tree, our last node tree. So one tip is, because this will apply to every single clip on every single group, you can come here either to your lightbox or your clips down here, Command A, so select them all, and just come here to layers and apply grade. So this template is in every single shot. The spider groups are all S-log3s, and let's check some Alexa. It's in every single group, and these are not changeable by group. As I said, only the group dedicated ones. This is shot by shot, so we're only changing rather nastily that shot only, because we're on clip, so it is clip based. Our primaries, secondaries, and trims. These are all clip by clip adjustments. So now that we have our tree completed, so at the very start we have S-log3 going to Davinci white gamut. At the very back of it we have Davinci white gamut going in our display referred color space. We only have one LUT apply, one Kodaky 23A3, and I already explained how to tweak every single thing to make a fantastic look. I'm gonna fly through this because otherwise it's gonna be the longest video ever. If you wanna see it in action a little bit, I suggest you watch the live grade video where I use this node tree. But yeah, so I said before to set up in your project settings that we are defaulting the luminance mix to 0, and this is because of these two nodes here that are in linear. So the gamma of these two nodes are in linear, and I'm gonna make with time a whole video of why working linear is much better than working on the HDR palette or just your offset, your primary offset for both exposure and balancing if you're after photometric manipulation of the image. If not, then that's why we have this note here. But let me go bit by bit. So exposure linear, this needs to be used with the gain wheel. I'm writing my exposure in this case. I'm gonna bring it down ever so slightly. Then we have this LG, which is lift, gamma, gain, shadows, midtones, and highlights. So this is a bit of a hybrid one. I'm gonna jump to the ratio first, and then I'm gonna come back to this. But I already set my exposure. I'm gonna use my ratio, and we set it to not use an S-curve because the whole curve of the whole video is, the S-curve is set on my look depth. In this case, is embedded on my LUT here. So whatever change I do to this ratio is gonna be in a linear fashion. So let's suppose I'm matching this to another shot. So I can punch this a little bit more or soften it. Everything rotates around the pivot of Davinci Resolve Intermediate .336. So actually, I'm gonna just touch it a little bit more, 1.1, just a little bit more to make it a bit more punchy, just for the sake of demonstration. And then let's go back to this now. So this one, being exposure in a linear fashion, is the most photometric way of writing the exposure. So if we have several cameras or several shots that need to match exposure, this is the best way of matching exposure. And same as ratio, by not using an S-curve, we are just changing the ratio linearly. So it's much easier to match discrepancies in contrast within different shots or different cameras pointing at the same shot. But then lift gamma gain is a bit of a hybrid one. So I use this node to, well, mostly to help those shots that don't mathematically match by increasing the contrast in a linear way. Some of the shots that, and this is mostly, very fast shot commercials or corporate videos where from shot to shot nothing really makes sense, so to speak, for lifting the shadows, midtones and highlights separately. And the worst case scenario is if the white balance is super off for some reason and I need to change the colors in these 3 different gammas. I don't usually go that way. You can even use this for a very broad stroke on look development. But in terms of shot to shot, I don't tend to change the colors of the lift gamma gain. And I pray every time that I don't need to use it at all. I just go, everything's being shot fairly okay. So I only touch exposure, ratio, contrast, and then balance to just to white balance the image. Again, in a linear way, we're using the gain. So in this case, I'm gonna give a bit more, tiny bit more warmth. Because I think, the skin tones look maybe tiny bit less, look slightly better, a bit warmer. Oh, that's my preferential look, or the director or DP, whatever. Color is subjective, so you might like it or you may not. But, this is my preferential balance in this case. Remember, balance and exposure, you only write the gain wheel, not anything else. So I think here we can declare that the primaries are done. This is sort of a hybrid or a bridge between the primaries and the secondaries. So I'm cheating a bit. You could argue that these are maybe secondaries, but for me, these are here to give little touches to the primaries. So let's start with the HDR. The HDR, as shown in my previous live grade video, I use HDR mostly for bringing and matching the highlights and sometimes the shadows from shot to shot. So usually for me, the HDR palette is only for highlights and shadows and blacks, as I said. So I use my panel, which are, again, much faster, but you can click here, you can see which highlights you are affecting. You can narrow, if you press Shift H, you can leave that there and you can narrow the selection. So I want to narrow it just to those highlights. And then looking a bit at my waveform here, looking what I'm doing, maybe increasing that. So before and after, it's just subtle. It's just very subtle, and I'm making those very bright sides a bit more in line with the rest of the footage. Most of the time, I use this to match from shot to shot. So watch my previous video. Log is very similar to the verb. Sometimes, in this case, it's much more precise, right? In terms of the log, is, if you will, it's slightly cleaner because it's broader. And they're called highlights, midtones, and shadows. God knows why, but maybe just to make more obvious that it only really applies to the highlights. So I'm gonna lower this a bit. You can see. I'll do it with my panel, so you can see, by just writing my highlight I'm gonna do before and after, I'm only affecting those highlights. So the same for midtones, and yeah, you can see the shadows at the back. I'm fluffing, but it's quite broad, right? It's not just those dark areas in the bushes at the back. So it really depends what the shot needs. If it needs a really tighter, more prone to breakage, but you need to be careful with the HDR palette. A log a bit broader, but you can define ranges here for shadows and highlights, so you can sort of precise this. But then if you're doing highlights plus this, I might as well just only use the HDR. But there's a place for both, and sometimes I use both at the same time. Curves, this one and the next one, these two, curves and hue saturation, could be potentially serve the same function, but then I'll tell you how I use them. So curves in this case, and I'm referring to these curves here, but not the contrast curve, but all the other curves. At this point, the contrast is already set. So I use this mostly for the hue and saturation changes. More often than not, I use lume versus sat, which I really like what it does, and sat versus sat. So always the last word is what's been affected. So here, based on luminance, you're affecting saturation. So to the right, and you can see in the graphic, are the whites, and to the left you have the blacks, and this is the image. It's not fulfilling the whole thing because we're working on Davinci Intermediate, which is a way bigger bucket. So none of these highlights really exist on the image that you're looking at. So be based on this graph. If you start moving this and say, but nothing's happened, it's because up to this point, nothing really happens. But yeah, so basically you can see how you can see here all these highlights are being desaturated first. Let me go a bit bigger and do on and off. So you get the idea. We are affecting saturation based on the luminance of the image, and same thing with saturation for saturation. We are desaturating the most saturated colors of the image. Yeah. So this again, preferential writing of saturation. So not everything gets saturated or desaturated at the same time. And again, you need to be really broad. You can see here that it's not looking great. I mean, I'll do it on and off. So some of those punchy colors are coming down, and some of the more mild color are staying, like the skin tones. But you need to be broader than just what I did here, because the image tends to break quite easily. So a bit broader there, and yeah, we're desaturating in a more nicer way. Cool. So that's how I use it, and you can use by any means this for quick hue versus sat. So relative to the hue, you are affecting the saturation. Yeah, you can see how those colors get punchy, or you desaturate those oranges in his. Let me get it bigger, so on and off. This is very broad again, and it's not, you can make it broader, you can make it narrower, but yeah, just always make sure that you're not breaking your image. So this is a way of just changing the hue with hue versus hue, but at this point I know that you know how to use all these. But as I said, I personally use these two curves here, lume versus sat and sat versus sat. And then I use the hue saturation, that DCTL, this is by Pixel Tools, created by Jason, and now they've joined forces with Carl Hendrickson. So they're delivering really good quality stuff. Truth to be told, it's very similar to what Davinci Resolve 19 released here with the color slice. But I got so used to working with this one, and I feel it's a bit cleaner as well, and I have these vectors where I can really see, for instance, the yellows, right? So I can see what I'm affecting, and I can narrow my selection, which is not very dissimilar. This is where the yellows, right? It's not very dissimilar to doing this here. and then if you keep pressing Shift H, and then with the center, you can move that piece of the pie. But I feel the Pixel Tools DCTL is a bit cleaner. But anyway, I use that. It's a paid for DCTL. So if you don't have it, by any means, use the color slice because it's very, very similar. And this is where I add my overall saturation, if I need to punch the saturation or the saturation, density, the depth of density. And yeah, so of course I have another instance of that here, where I choose either the color slicer, again, Tetra, or the RGB matrix to define that color palette and saturation. This case is shot by shot. So again, in a real world where shot with cinema lenses, with single camera or multiple cameras, without the exact same camera, and the first AC check that the camera sensors are all matching, etc., etc. There shouldn't be many discrepancies about shot by shot colors. In the more commercial corporate world, it's a bit, where everything's a bit more over the place. Between shot to shot, there could be discrepancies, shots. So again, for me, all this is, it is massaging that one clip, but it's also matching the shots to each other in a clip by clip basis. In a broader stroke, and you can see my previous video, the shot matching when the cameras don't match at all, I do it by separating the cameras by group and working on that group. So I'm just applying that change to the whole camera. That's how I would use my whole primaries. So let's go to the secondaries. Okay, but before jumping to the secondaries, let me show you very quickly my methodology for grading that you must have heard it in talking about passes, first pass, second pass. And this is something that for me, the layers, sometimes I'm still culprit of really want to, tackle one image and make the best out of it. So obviously start with primaries, jump to the secondaries, start adding qualifier masks and some OFX, beauty retouching, tilt shifting, it's glow, lens flare, make the one shot really shine. If you have time and you're working on an advert, on a corporate job, on a social media piece, 15 seconds, or you have the time, all the time in the world, or it's a passion project, so it's your own project, and you don't have a deadline, no one is paying you per hour, and you can dedicate as much time as you want on a clip, well, it's up to you. But professionally, you are paid by hour and you have to prioritize things, right? So that's part of the job, prioritizing. So professionally, you are paid by hour, you're doing one pass, and then if you have time, you do a second pass. And I like the layers because it allows me to not have, a node tree with everything primaries and secondaries, to have primaries and secondaries all in one window, because I finish my primaries and but what if I add a flag here and there? Because now I finish my primaries and boom, move on to the next shot, move on to the next shot, move on to the next shot, never leaving the primaries. Yeah, you can do a revision, you can do a quick watch and say, okay, I'm happy where the contrast is, I'm happy where the white balance is, I'm happy where the exposure is, and those little things, the highlights match to each other, and you can see how I did it on my previous video of the live grade. And then okay, happy with the film, how it looks at the moment, and then you move on to secondaries. This section is where you start performing all your masks. I call them all Q, as in qualifiers. You need to enable, could be qualifying, that color there, and then we can sort of clean it a little bit, spend some time here blurring, denoising, and having sort of a decent mask. If I don't want the flowers, then I can not only qualify, but create an actual mask. Okay, once you have the mask and track and everything, if you need to, you have several options. The quickest option would be to grab the offset so everything moves uniformly, and it's fairly clean. There's no chatter or anything. That's one use, qualifier, mask. In this case, I'm using qualify and mask and tracking. In this case, I'm playing just to put an example, but it's all those extra details that you think that the shot needs in order to shine or to match with the previous or next shot, as I show on my live grade on my previous video. So the idea is not to overdo this section. Sometimes, I was gonna say most of the time, sometimes I don't even jump on secondaries. I put here 5 instances of qualifying. I tend, once I use a qualifier, I tend to label it purple jumper. Then, just for an example, I can put There's many ways of, of doing this, but just to do a very, very, very quick example, just face. And I'm gonna do it just by using the mask, not even qualifying, just dragging it, softening a lot, and just bringing a tad, around his face for the viewers to pay more attention on his face and nothing else. So we're lifting it a bit. These raw here are flags. In my experience, like working with the DP sat next to me, these are the first things that we tackle because this is usually something that if a DP have time on set, these are flags, just flagging a bit of this window, just add a polyboard to bounce from the other side to create a less contrast ratio on her face, just to add some sort of flag up here or probably from the outside on an angle so the light hits this part of the table less. So these sort of things that are not like rotating a hue or changing or a drastic change. It's more photometric, it's more photographical, it's more it's more what DP would do if they have more time on set. And I have already set top left. Let me show you just a few flags. Let me show you on, if you press highlight shift H on your case, and let's do it on black and white so it's more visible. Top, you can see what's affecting, just the top, the left, let's do one by one, the right, the bottom, and spotlight, and this could be inverted, and I'll show you. It's just to, as the word says, just to highlight a portion, just sort of a spotlight, just in this case probably highlighting the subject or what's more important in your shot. But for instance, this is, as I said, used photometrically, so or photographically. So the key light is very sidey, so it comes from this window. There's light coming from this practical here and from this window here as well. But you can clearly see, that this is the negative side of her face. You can see that this is hit by the key light from the window, and this is more in the darkness. So you can either decide to emphasize this by say, okay, on the right we have this, the light coming from the window, so we enable first. So nothing happens when you enable. These are just flags. You can work on your gamma gain or offset. You can see the highlight, you can see what's being affected. Maybe I can even do that. See how I'm just bringing that key light a bit more onto her. I can do the opposite. From the left, I can subtract light because it's the negative side. So I'm increasing that ratio. Get this one a bit away and here a bit softer on her face. So it's a bit less obvious. It's a bit more of a touch. But I touch that, on and off. We're increasing that ratio. We have this bottom that it will affect the whole bottom, and you don't have, these are quick presets. You don't have to use this. You can go to the bottom, which I'm gonna enable, but rather than using what I presetted, I decided to use a circle, right? So maybe on an angle, always super soft. What I wanna do to this table, is just bring it down, on and off. So again, we're taking light from there, which is quite punchy. So again, your face goes to the subject. For me, it's her concentration. The story in this show is her concentrating on whatever it's there on the laptop. The first thing is luminance. Wherever it's brighter on the image, your eyes will go there first. But then with flags, you start concentrating the light specifically where you want. And spotlight is like an overall, right? So let's say rather than doing flags, let me delete these three. I say, okay, I'll just go straight to spotlight. I know this is a circle. In this case, I'm gonna modify it and I'm gonna, there you go. So let's go some before and after. You can track this. Davinci Resolve has a spectacular tracker. So yeah, rather than crafting the light that was there or enhancing what the DP did, I just did a quick, okay, let's look at her quickly. Let's make the light a bit brighter around her. And that's it, but you need to pay attention to the story, right? It's not just making one image pretty, but it's making the story coherent and enhancing what's being told. Let's move on this next section. This is a layer mixer. So all these are parallel mixers. So whatever you do here, it's gonna be mixed here and passed on to all these layers and passed on. In this case, the layer mixer, and it's gonna pass on to both of these. If I enable this talent, right? And I make something horrible, as we usually do. And then I enable this one, nothing happens. And nothing happens, and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go opposite, yeah? I'm gonna go yellow on this one. It's not mixing at all. So this works as layers, where the bottom layer, strangely enough, if you were to use Photoshop, is the top layer. So it hides whatever is behind, right? So if I were to do a mask on this one, you can see. So this is the mask on the layer, which is the bottom one, and everything behind is the back layer. It's the layer at the back. So this is doing something really horrible. I'm explaining how to use a layer mixer. Let's delete this and the mask and the background. For me, as I said, this is for me talent or object, usually talent, and this is full background. And this is, I use the magic mask. Usually, sometimes with this concept that I already explained very quickly, you can, imagine doing different things. But in this case, let's come to the magic mask down here, come to the person. Yeah, because if you track like this, it will not pay attention to what you added on your look development on before. It's sort of bypassing the image, so it's much faster for the system. This is a quick, I'm not gonna do the whole clip, it's a quick tracking for demonstration, because I won't be able to play it back in real time because of the bloody 8.6K that my computer cannot play in real time. And then we have separated, and I'm gonna do again this horrible thing that I like doing, the Smurf world and the background. But you can see, you can see what I'm doing. So I can give her a bit more light, a bit more, I can give her a bit of contrast. I'm going to give her a bit more warmth. I think she was on the shadow, so she's a tiny bit blue, but yeah. So we can do a quick before and after. And if you want to enhance that or treat the background separately, let's see a hue rotation to the back again, because we're playing. So making those greens a bit more yellow. So let's go to the right. Yeah, so it's not summer anymore, it's autumn. Yeah, so we're going from green. And with these two nodes, we're getting from this, which is a bit cooler in the shadows and the greens, are very punchy because I hate with the sun, where we're going a bit more yellow orange on the trees and give her a bit more warmth and a bit more light. But this is usually how I use to separate a subject or an object, and you can do here a person mask or object mask. It's very clever, and it's getting clever, and it will get super clever with AI. So do start implementing this, and as AI gets better, this is gonna get super amazing. And this is how I use it. And I'm not gonna demonstrate all of this one by one, because otherwise I may do a whole other tutorial. So these are all OFX. So when I get to this point, these are qualifier masks, qualifying certain aspects of the image and then make a change. These are flags. This is more photographic. This is what I just explained, which is a bit more separating the talent or an object from the backgrounds. And then once all of this mixed, it goes out into effects. Sky replacement will replace skies. I'm gonna do a whole tutorial about it. Relight. This is something that I haven't started using that much, but it uses this sort of map, like a depth map, to understand what's in the foreground, what's in the background, and then you can add lights and the reach, the contrast, the glossiness. Face refinement, if I have to do makeup rather than just do frequency separation. I have a whole video about it, and this is you can quickly see what it's doing to the whole image, right? You can see the grass here, all these patchy things, and how it's evening out all these things. Obviously, this is meant to even out skin tones. And it's a compound now, so you can go in. I have a whole video on how to use this, so I'm not gonna spend much time on how to tweak. But yeah, it's a sort of frequency separation tool. Patch replacement, I use it all the time to remove, just remove little things from the image. Color compressor, this is so powerful. I am gonna do a whole new video about OFX, and I use it quite often. And then solid, let's grab a shot with, let's keep it on this one. So I'm gonna grab this and gonna get that color. I'm gonna enable this, so I'm gonna get the color. So what I mean, I can do side by side. What I like doing sometimes is grabbing a still and then disable this, playing the still, and of course, you know, get there, and the director sent me a hex code, or the creative or whoever, and said, please use that color for where did we replace this here, right? Purple jumper. So it gave me that, right? So I want those yellowish green sides on his jumper to be purple, and this is the exact hex code because we are releasing this jumper. Let's suppose it's commercial and this is a product with this color as well as the yellow, and it gives you like 3-4 different hex codes. So I use this to, you know, there's no precision here on the offset or any of the primaries to put a hex code. Yes, on the color compressor, but we can talk about that later. This is the easiest way, just doing it by eye, right? So look for that color, and you know, whatever you say, okay, this sort of a match. So that is the color of the new product. Product 1, product 2, and then we keep changing the color to the exact hex code, and that's what I use quite a lot of solid here for commercial work. Let's move on. Depth. This is sort of another way of doing this. Sometimes I use this, sometimes I use this. If this doesn't quite work because of the magic mask, I use depth. It will sort of understand the depth of the image, what's in the foreground, what's in the background. The focus background again is really good. It realistic, the focusing of the background only relative to a mask. Tilt shift, I love tilt shift. The realism of this blur is really good, and it's the same blur that I use on my lens distortion. Glow, it will, you know, and let's bring the shine threshold so it's catching on those highlights. And then, you know, you can use gamma to bring that light. You can change the colors if you want, you know, warmer, less exaggerated, on and off. This is a lens flare. Again, you have a lot of type. Sometimes as a touch, as a detail, I use this quite a lot. You can track it. You can track it with the IntelliTracker, and it's really, really good. It doesn't have to be this strong. Lens reflection, there's a lot of options. Really cool stuff to blend with your images. The amount of tweaks. This is spending time doing, effects now. But, you can do a blend and do really cool stuff. You can move these different colors, as you can see. Maybe something warmer will feel slightly better, etc. You have different shapes, a lot of different things. And light rays, similar to the glow, it will catch from bright regions or edges. What you could do is you can use masks as well, right? Because I don't want it coming from behind. I want it coming from the side. So let's just draw a really basic shape around that window. Always add softness, just in case something shows weird. The direction of these lights, there you go. So the good thing is you can see the mask is up to, the mask is up to here, but the rays, you can see rays here when I move them. So I'm determining not the range of the effect or where the effect should stop, but where is the source. It's not everything. I didn't want everything. I want just the windows. And then, I'm catching the lamp up here. No, I just want the window. I just put it there. Then the effect will, the effect will extend. Yeah, you're determining, you're limiting the source, not the range of the effect. But you get an idea, right? If it's quite nice. You forgot to bring your haze can or your hazer onto set and say, okay, we can do it in post. So you can do something like that. You can animate it. It will follow if you determine that mask, the source that created. It will move automatically, so to speak. And it's quite nice, etc. So that's my last effects. There's a lot of effects in DaVinci Resolve. These are the most used by me when they ask me something, special. And at the very end of the secondaries, if you didn't have enough fun with all this, we have an instance of noise reduction, because if you go heavy-handed and you start qualifying and changing hues and this and that, you might introduce a bit of chatter, a bit of noise, so you can help you with denoising here a little bit. And then an overall vignette per shot, if you need it as well. And then we move to the trims. Basically, once I develop my look, could be with a DP, could be with the creative, could be on my own, could be with the director, could be with anyone in the room. Not really, but sometimes. Then we move into primaries, secondaries, and then that's it. That's the film or the commercial finished. And then the director shows it to the producer and say, oh, this and this could be a scene. In this case, this is by shot. So we're talking about shot. So yeah, this shot is a bit too warm. Can we cool it down? So, okay, so I enable the producer and I cool it down, right? So I don't have to go back into what I already did on my balance and modify that, and then for the director to come back and say, no, actually I'm gonna override that decision from the producer and I like it how it was before. I said, okay, your director wants it as he wanted it before. Okay, let's override that decision from the producer. Yeah, overriding it. And the same thing, director, producer, DOP, they can have the overall broad. This is not a secondary, this is a broad change. So these are the so-called trims. But then the sort of the easiest way, this is, as I said, clip by clip, right? If you have a broad change to do, say we have, let's pretend ODS log 3 R group, let's call it a scene. So you can come here to the group post clip if you haven't used it for a different reason. And here you can bring the trims and you can do it this way. You can come to a layer, display node graph. You can go to the trims here and you can say, apply active color, and it will apply this to a different layer. So you have the trims now by group. So let's pretend again the producer wants everything cool. I'm gonna go Smurfs again for the sake of example, and all that scene got bluer. Not the scene of the Alexas, but all the scenes of the Sony cameras got horribly blue, just for sake of example. Yeah, if you need to apply something to a scene as a whole and you've done groups by scenes, then this is where you perform that overall change. And with all this, we conclude this extensive video about my new 2025 fixed node tree. You can download this with all the extras that I showed you for only £10. I think it's $12, something like that. €12, I think, for everything that it includes, plus this video that is very long and it tells you the process of how I grade things. I think, if you like what you see, then it's affordable. For the answer, I have a code that you can get 10% discount, and then you can grab another goodies or the whole LUT pack or my film LUT pack from my coffee shop. And everything's really well priced. Thank you for staying until the very end, and I hope you have an amazing holiday. And if you are celebrating, and if you're not, well, rest up whilst the rest of the world spends money on fireworks and stupid plastic presents. Cynical. I love being cynical. And maybe you can treat yourself to some really nice fixed node trees. Until next time, bye.